we're one RS&H in the sense that one of the things that I have found after joining the team is that RS&H does so many other things in other portfolios, such as aviation and infrastructure and transportation, that may not have been visible in the federal marketplace, but are extremely valuable when you have subject matter experts. The work that they do for NASA, the work that they do for various localities, for airports or major transportation highways. Found out recently that a couple bridges that I drive over here locally on a routine basis, I had no clue that RS&H was actually the designer of record for those bridges. So the more that I get to know RS&H as a company, the more I'm able to see areas where I'm like, that value is something the federal government can grab. That value is that what we do here in this area, that's something that the federal market could really utilize and really could use that subject matter expertise to be brought into the federal market.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of AEC Perspectives, a podcast by RS&H. I am your host, Rachel Moore. I always like to say I'm the least important person in this room on this microphone, and you'll find out why soon, because we're going to talk about levels of leadership. And let's think about, if we think about architecture and engineering and construction, we definitely see it at the local level. We certainly see it at the state level, and we see it at the federal level. And that's what we're going to talk about today, collaboration and innovation in federal market leadership. And I will be the first to tell you RS&H is well poised to meet this moment, because I have 3 different speakers joining me on this episode today that are part of the federal level of leadership at RS&H. And I'm excited to introduce you to each of them. First off, we're going to start with Scott Grainger. Scott is an associate vice president at RS&H. After Scott's college graduation, he was commissioned via ROTC as a second lieutenant in the United States Air Force, where he served 30 years in the civil engineer career field and retired as a colonel. Scott is a registered professional engineer in the state of California, a project management professional, and a fellow in the Society of American Military Engineers. Scott is also a member of the same national board of directors as an elected director. Scott, that's a mouthful, but I'm really excited to welcome you to the podcast. Thanks for joining us yet again on AEC Perspectives.
Yep, Ohio gozaimasu from Japan. Thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
And especially from Japan, thank you for joining us from way across the globe. I'd love having you here. Next up, we have Cheryl Fromme, who is an associate vice president and U.S. Army account manager at RS&H. With over 3 decades of engineering and construction leadership experience at the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Cheryl has overseen major programs spanning civil works, military, environmental, and international sectors. She's a nationally recognized leader, named the Federal Engineer of the Year and one of the Inside Business's top 40 under 40. And she is deeply committed to building trusted partnerships and delivering complex projects. Cheryl holds a civil engineering degree from Old Dominion University and actively contributes to the industry through organizations like SAME and the ODU Visiting Council. Cheryl, very impressed to have you here. Thanks so much for joining us on the pod.
Thank you, Rachel. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here today.
I'm glad to have you. And finally, everybody, we're circling over to Jeremy Adams. Jeremy is an associate vice president at RS&H, bringing over 24 years of distinguished leadership and engineering experience from the U.S. Navy. A former executive officer with NAVFAC, Naval Facilities Engineering Systems Command Southeast, Jeremy has also served with NATO Special Operations Headquarters and the White House Military Office. He's a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy and holds multiple advanced degrees, including an MBA and a Master of Engineering in Project Management. Jeremy is a LEED accredited professional, a certified PMP, and a CB Combat Warfare Officer, now leading strategic growth initiatives in RS&H's federal market. Jeremy, also super impressed and in awe and happy to have you here on the podcast.
Glad to be here, Rachel. Thanks for having me.
Wow, I can't even. I think we have over 100 years of experience sitting in this podcast with me. And I'm just excited to dig into this with you all. And I'm sure our audiences as well. Just gave your bios, but I want to kick in with some introductions here. First of all, just a quick briefer. Scott and Jeremy, you both retired from different branches of the military before joining RS&H. And Cheryl, you joined the firm after retiring from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I want to go around to each of you and have you briefly share your path. Jeremy, I'm going to start things off with you. Can you briefly share your journey to joining RS&H and what drew you to federal market leadership here?
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. So my journey started in 2022 when I moved to Jacksonville, Florida, and started participating in SAME Jacksonville luncheons. So what drew me further into RS&H is because those initial daily, monthly luncheons that I had, I was really just focused with engaging industry as my role as the executive officer of NAVFAC Southeast. So it wasn't really tied to like, ooh, I want to know exactly what RS&H does. But as I matured and realized I was transitioning, started having more conversations. So Lisa Taylor Dugan was one of those first touch points because she was the president of SAME Jacksonville, and she's a member of the RS&H community. So I reached out to her. And there were certain things that, I was looking for. One was, belonging. I wanted a place that I could have connectedness to. So I joined the Navy in 1996. So after almost, 3 decades, you really feel like, that's your blood. And as I started talking with Lisa and others, really felt like that RS&H was a good spot for me. But what really nailed the hammer on the head was, the mission focus that RS&H had, the client focus. And I started to see all the projects that they supported NAVFAC and the Navy with, and I was really impressed. But the final piece really was just like the team atmosphere, the fact that RS&H is an employee-owner company. Everyone had a stake in the game right away, and they had fun doing it. So everyone I talked with, my current boss's boss and other colleagues, really truly enjoyed the environment. So that really drew me to come and sign on with RS&H.
Well, that's excellent. Gosh, I mean, you named several aspects of RS&H. Definitely some themes we've heard on the podcast before as people share. So I'm sure they're excited to have drawn you into the circle, if as you will, of RS&H. And Cheryl, I'd love to come over to you. I mean, I know Jeremy just talked a little bit about some of the things that drew him, but I would love to hear, everybody's got a different journey. What was your path to joining RS&H and the federal market leadership here at the company?
Thank you very much. So for me, after retiring almost 32 years in the Army Corps of Engineers, I really had to make a decision of, do I want to keep working, or do I maybe want to start traveling and just enjoying retirement? But I did make a decision that I wanted to keep working. And more importantly, I wanted to keep contributing to the mission that's guided my career over the last 30 plus years. And that was really supporting those who serve our nation. I am a military dependent. My father was in the military. He retired from the Navy. My brother's retired Marine Corps, and my husband's a former Marine, and my mother was up civil service for the Navy and the Army as well. So I think being a civil servant was just really in my blood for all those years, and I wasn't ready to not continue to support and serve those that are out there defending our nation. As I was looking around, for me, it's about showing up each day with purpose and working collaboratively to deliver solutions that really make a difference. And the federal team here at RS&H seemed to share the same type of commitment to serve the mission through thoughtful design, disciplined execution, and ingenuity in every project they delivered. I had the benefit of working with them as well as a lot of other great AE firms over the years. And so I was able to see firsthand how RS&H approached a project and what they brought to the table. And it wasn't just their subject matter expertise, which was extremely high end, but it was also their passion for it, their love for the project, their really client-driven approach to really want to be a great partner. And so for me, it just seemed like a natural next step to join the RS&H team because I really felt that we shared the same values.
Wow, that's excellent. I love, and Jeremy and Cheryl, you both have shared your own personal perspectives of some of the personal reasons too that you knew you weren't done. You wanted to keep serving and keep finding a way to be involved. Cheryl, you talked about your family. Jeremy, you talked about feeling that connectedness, which is even what drew you to the military. So I'm really loving that we're seeing some themes here. Scott, I'm going to bring it over to you, see if you can bring it home for us here. What was your personal journey to arrive to RS&H and federal leadership here?
I can't just cop out and say what they said, can I?
You sure could, but we want more, you know?
All right. So, for me, it's, again, a lot of the same things about Jeremy and Cheryl hit on, relationships, service, and growth. So those are kind of the three things that really, hit it for me. I found out about RS&H through a relationship from a mentor of mine. So someone whom I'd served with in the service. And then, as I started to, look at what my options were post-retirement, I had a lot of conversations with that person who happened to be at RS&H and just, told me about, how RS&H was as a company. And then also I actually got to work with RS&H a little bit while I was on active duty as well. And so I got to see firsthand, again, that client focus and some of the trust that the team builds with everybody. And then, like both Jeremy and Cheryl, I knew that I wasn't done. I've got this, desire to continue serving. So I was able to do that through the federal marketplace here, federal market in RS&H. So I'm still getting to work with some of the same clients. I'm actually working at a base where I was a commander at, this week. So it's really neat to be able to come back and continue to serve just in a different capacity. And then, for me, it's the opportunity to grow both myself and then grow others, so we can grow the market, we can grow the people around us, and continuing to be able to lead. And, was given that freedom and ability to do that. And then when you've got, partners like Jeremy and Cheryl, it makes coming to work fun.
Thank you. You brought that perfectly. So I appreciate you sharing that perspective as well. Plus, I have to say, you kind of laid up my next question very nicely, because one of the things you mentioned was client focus. And I think that we've heard that resoundingly, not just with the people in this particular episode, but on other episodes of this podcast. Client focus is a bit of a big deal for RS&H. And I think it sounds like your extensive backgrounds for each of you, unique backgrounds, but also very extensive, no one can question. But those have shaped your perspectives. And Cheryl, I'd like to take this question to you first, and then I'll come to the gentleman next. But Cheryl, how has your own experience influenced RS&H's approach to federal client support? And then just any unique insights that you bring to the table when addressing the needs of clients in the federal market sector? Would love to hear your perspective on that.
Having previously served as a federal client myself, I think I bring a very unique perspective that allows me to advocate for the client's expectations for sure. Yeah. And here in RS&H, as one of the federal account managers, my mission is really to strategically not only drive growth, but also ensure quality across the federal market we support. RS&H actually proudly operates as either a prime or joint venture partner in more than 28 federal IDIQs. And we collaborate with agencies such as the Army Corps of Engineers, Navy Facilities Command, Air Force, DECA, and a variety of other federal agencies across our portfolio. We are growing in complexity. We have active projects across Europe, Japan, as well as within the United States. So it's a growing opportunity for RS&H to really be able to serve our clients. And having been not only within Norfolk District, and as my time in Norfolk District was, I be able to interact with projects over in Japan through the DODEA program, Department of Defense Education Activity Program. But I also served a little over 2 years, not quite 3 years, in Europe District as the Chief of Engineering and or Construction Division over in Europe District. So having that familiarity with some of the challenges that working overseas does really bring to the table, whether it's through the relationships with the BAWM or other locations, the coast nations that you serve, or just the different time zones, believe it or not, can be a challenge sometimes when you're serving for projects overseas. But in reality, whether they're stateside or OCONUS, just understanding those expectations from a service industry that I think that I can bring and advocate for the client. And together with Jeremy and Scott, we ensure RS&H's approach remains very mission-driven, very focused on delivering projects with efficiency and reliability and high standards that our federal clients expect and deserve. And that is, for me, I think one of the big things that I'm able to bring to that table is understanding of what we can do, just even slight modifications to how we invoice or the status updates that we provide, that then the client can turn around and utilize that in either upward reporting or for their own internal status updates that they have to do with their stakeholders. So little tiny things that may not seem much, but I think that could be very valuable, as well as obviously safely delivering projects on time, within budget, and to the highest quality standards is definitely something that I'm able to bring to that table.
Oh, well, I would say too. I mean, that seems like the ideal state where, oh my gosh, we have someone who used to be a customer and now they're going to come on the inside and make sure that quality of that experience is just up leveled. Because if anyone can speak to that, it would certainly be someone from your position. Because you helped me decide who to go to next because you were talking about overseas and even Japan, which, Scott, that happens to be where you're joining from today, which is great. Scott, over to you. I want to ask you too about just knowing what you have an extensive background that is unique to yourself from even Jeremy and Cheryl, how has that influenced your and RS&H's approach to federal client support and those unique insights that you bring to the table? Tell us what you bring to the table all the way from Japan.
So, I mean, I think I've got 6 total years of actually living in Japan, both in northern and southern Japan. But, of my 30-year career in the military, I spent 11 of it in the Pacific. So I think that's one thing that, I bring to the team is just that knowledge of this region, which has really, for the last 15 or so years, been really forefront in the market, in the needs for our nation, and the opportunity to be able to continue to serve in this market and this region of the world, which is really a significant region of the world, is just fantastic. So I think I can bring some of that, but also I think just amongst all 3 of us, we all bring a slightly different perspective, but an understanding of the federal client. We know the federal government from different perspectives, whether, with service in uniform or service as a civilian. And all of that helps us to really build that trust with our customers. Our clients know that we get it, especially, in times of challenge. They know that they can come to us. They don't have to spend time explaining what's going on and give us that context. We can just be there and be that trusted advisor. Now clearly, we have to show that we're credible, but our backgrounds bring that. They also allow us to have that, that rapport.
So thank you so much for that, Scott. And that makes a ton of sense too. Especially, that's what I'm loving hearing from all of you is like, you obviously have your own journeys that you've taken with the military, and even geographically speaking can offer those different perspectives. Jeremy, I'm going to bring it over to you then too, because I'd love to hear, you're sitting here listening to what Cheryl and Scott have shared about, well, here's where they're coming from and it's different, but all of this is an additive into making sure the client focus at RS&H is strong, especially when it pertains to federal markets. Tell us about your unique insights that you're bringing to say, hey, that this is how I'm trying to up-level RS&H and the federal markets and that client focus.
Yeah, first, a little bit of background myself. Similar to Scott, a lot of time overseas. So I've spent 7 years in overseas assignments, with the Navy. But many of my jobs were also what we call joint jobs, meaning servicing across all the services within the DoD as well as internationally. I've served in 5 different Navy regions as well, so it really gives me a broad perspective on how we support the Navy in particular, but with those joint assignments and international assignments, a lot of experience with different federal agencies and what's needed for the whole of government fight. So that's just a little bit of background. I would add one more item is, so I am was a warranted contracting officer, so a lot of acquisition experience from, executing contracts in 3 different styles: base operating support contracts, construction contracts, and AE contracts. So for me, I really feel like it's just the start. It's just the start for Scott, Cheryl, and I, really as what I'll use the Navy term as a triad. The group, the 3 of us working together, and I put it in 3 buckets, really visionary. You heard Cheryl and Scott, we bring this broader, fresher look to RS&H. We look at it from a whole of government perspective, not only from the Army, Air Force, but also the Navy and also the civil agencies from the federal market. So we're able to connect those dots and really look at a bigger picture. Secondly, from a strategic aspect, we really know this national security apparatus, the national security enterprise. We know the National Security Council, we know the national security strategy, the national defense strategy, and how those intertwine and go down into the services for execution. And then the last piece is really the operational piece. Cheryl and Scott both hit on those, but we have firsthand knowledge and experience working with clients, working internally with our own engineering staffs, and how to execute a mission, a program, and understand their organizational structure, the acquisition process, the acquisition changes that are going on, and really create solutions that are better for our government.
To go back, if I may, and add on a little bit to that question for myself, is that, I'm so new. I'm fresh out of the federal government service. So I've only been out of it for a few months. So I think really from my perspective is that I say what I bring to RS&H from the federal market perspective is really myself, because almost 32 years within the Corps of Engineers, that's who I am. That's how I think. That's what I know. And it's how I perceive and how it's through the lens that I evaluate everything that I do. So as we are developing, whether it's strategic visions, or reviewing plans and specs, or developing design quality plans, project management plans, or resource loading for how we'll support the federal services, it's through that lens of a former federal client that I'm kind of looking at everything. It's in my blood and it's how I evaluate it. So I think that's one of the things that I really just bring to the table is that, as we talked about before, is that knowledge and understanding of what folks are looking for and what we can do to get it right the first time, to not have to have that do a retake and rework some efforts to get it right the first time, and ensuring that we understand the importance of the quality and upholding those standards. There's places I've worked, Arlington National Cemetery or the Radford Army Ammunition Plant, that it's the utmost highest quality and there's zero tolerance for getting it wrong, because the impacts to operations or readiness is just too great if you get it wrong. So you got to get it right the first time. And that's some of the areas that I think that I'm able to bring to the table. And I think, like I mentioned, working with Scott and Jeremy, they really help drive that, really motivate me and push me to help support RS&H's staff in understanding that and communicating that aspect.
Well, and I think that, like I said, I think that's why we have we've got three great people here in this podcast to talk about this, but why RS&H has three amazing people in this federal market leadership. I want to talk about that next because, Cheryl, you just talked too about you got your own perspective too. You talk about that quality, that level of excellence that you have to have. And it sounds like all three of you, that has been your experience. And, understandably, when you're talking about the military and the level that's at, yes, quality is certainly going to be a priority up there because of what's at stake, right? We've all referred to that and alluded to that. Well, I want to bring that then, as leaders in RS&H, you obviously lead teams, right? And you're trying to translate, I would imagine, trying to translate down that collaboration and that visionary, that strategy through to your teams and prioritizing those values with them. So I'd like to go around the room again. And Jeremy, I'll start with you here. As RS&H really does emphasize that collaboration innovation to be key drivers of success, I would love to learn, with your team, how are you working to prioritize those values with your team and your vision for how RS&H can continue to innovate over the next 5 years in the AEC industry? What's your plan? How are you doing that with your team?
First, say that collaboration and innovation is a must. That's why we exist, and that's what we got to do going forward. I think we've relaunched our thought process as a one RS&H mindset. So we want to be the broker, the source of solutions. We want to be the client that wants to give us a phone call, right? We're connected to the client, even in states like today where the government is shut down. Certain folks are working for free, at least right now. And we're there, they can pick up the phone, and we're the AE of choice. So instilling that in our teams is something we talk about. And I don't want to single out just me, and that's something that Scott and Cheryl, along with the federal leadership team, do on a daily basis. So that's, our focus is being client-centric in delivering, and continuing to deliver solutions for our clients' needs. We've got really good CPARs, which is our evaluation by our client on how we do, and we want to continue to deliver. That's the best message we can tell our clients, is just to continue to do great work, and they're going to come back to us. So there's a couple other things I'd just point out. One, we're leveraging artificial intelligence, so to the greatest extent we can, in the engineering field, because there's certainly some legal ramifications related to just throw it in the chat GPT and just trust it is not something we're going with. So we have a policy on that, and we're working forward to, leverage those tools to the greatest extent. Plus, we are cybersecurity maturity model certification level 2 self-attested as a company.
Scott, over to you. How are you trying to instill those values of collaboration and innovation and just really trying to make sure your team is all kind of set and ready for the next 5 years in the AEC industry from RS&H, that client focused first mindset.
Yeah, so I think, first of all, I think, it's not my team, it's our team. And that's the beauty of all of this. We're all working together doing the same thing and coming at it from slightly different perspectives, but we all have, the common values, the integrity, accountability, creativity, and teamwork. And I think it's that teamwork and collaboration that really brings this home to me. And all of that starts with trust, and we trust each other, and we build that trust within our teams, both internal to the company, but also external. Cheryl talked about our joint ventures and our partners that we work with on a day-to-day basis. Plus, we build that trust with our clients. Cheryl, just having joined, the company, she's got the most recent experience with our client, and having been one of them, not so long ago. And that trust comes with, hey, we know you were just here, and she's able to, talk to folks and just kind of give them, this is what it's like, this is what's going on, and this is how we can help. So that really allows us to have open and honest conversation with people.
So Cheryl, I know Scott actually he was just talking about, the value that you bring in just being so fresh from the client side and coming into RS&H. And I would imagine you're offering that perspective to your team to say, look, I was just on the flip side of this, and here's what I can offer us so that we're ready for this next 5 years in the AEC industry. I'm sure that's what you're already doing, but tell us more a little bit about how you're positioning our team at RS&H from your perspective to be a collaborative and have those values into the future.
One of the things that I respected quite a bit about RS&H is that they really looked at collaboration and innovation as not just values, but actually essential to delivering their mission. And so it was just kind of an integral part of what they did. And it was one of the reasons that I thought that they delivered so well. But we talked quite a bit about RS&H, and I think Jeremy or Scott may have mentioned that we're one RS&H in the sense that one of the things that I have found after joining the team is that RS&H does so many other things in other portfolios, such as aviation and infrastructure and transportation, that may not have been visible in the federal marketplace, but are extremely valuable when you have subject matter experts. The work that they do for NASA, the work that they do for various localities, for airports or major transportation highways. Found out recently that a couple bridges that I drive over here locally on a routine basis, I had no clue that RS&H was actually the designer of record for those bridges. And locally, Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, they're providing some construction support as well. So the more that I get to know RS&H as a company, the more I'm able to see areas where I'm like, that value is something the federal government can grab. That value is that what we do here in this area, that's something that the federal market could really utilize and really could use that subject matter expertise to be brought into the federal market. So that's, I guess, one of the visions that myself, Scott, and Jeremy are really looking at now is that we come in at this with a new set of eyes. Neither one of us have been in RS&H for 10 plus years, where we're all fairly new to RS&H, albeit I'm the probably newest. But we've all kind of fairly new, and so we could just see RS&H through a new set of lens and a different set of lens than others. And we're really able to see subject matter expertise that might be housed in a different market sector, but that really truly are something that we want to integrate and bring into our federal market sector. And we're doing that right now. And we've had a lot of successful projects in doing that. I believe Scott's worked on several projects, but we've had a lot of success in integrating folks from outside of just the federal market. It's just not, having that expertise and bringing it in there. From innovation perspective, we have a project controls group, which in a lot of the federal market, they might see that as scheduling, like construction scheduling. It's dealing with construction scheduling and helping in clients as they're overseeing the construction project, which most of our clients actually perform the construction oversight themselves. But sometimes they need a little extra help and support behind the scenes to really help them really manage through a lot of the documentation and a lot of what they're seeing out there and some of the paperwork that goes on, as well as doing schedule management and reviewing that. And so we are bringing in our project control groups to help improve the capabilities and the quality of what we're able to provide from cradle to grave of the projects, from planning all the way to execution and construction oversight. So those are some values, or I guess you would say some areas and ways in which that we're trying to really bring that innovation and leverage it forward.
Yeah. No, those all sound excellent. I mean, I feel very confident just hearing how poised you all are. You have the future in mind. You have your teams in mind. The focus is on the client, but the focus is also on the future. All right, finally, let's bring this home. You are leaders at RS&H. You're in the federal market leadership at RS&H. And from what it sounds like, we have the right people in place. But you're not the only people. We've talked about one team. And it sounds like from all three of you, we've heard that RS&H's culture emphasizes teamwork. How does that play into delivering AEC services to our federal agency clients? And again, some of this might be, touch on some of the things we've already talked about. Jeremy, I know you talked about your team is always on, ready for whatever's happening with the clients at any stage. And, Scott, we talked about, being in different geographies and, even you're in Japan right now. Just some examples there. So, Scott, I'll take this one to you first. Teamwork for you, how does that play into delivering AEC services to your federal agency clients?
So I think a couple of things. One, Cheryl hit on it first part of this episode where she was talking about belonging. And, we just now launched Honor, an employee resource group that focuses on military, but not somebody who has been in the military. This is for anybody who has a desire to support, to be able to be engaged with our military, whether they have family members, whether they just have a connection, whether they have a particular love for that. So being able to see yourself in that group, that helps build that teamwork. And then, that building of teamwork inside the company translates to what we're doing outside the company. Teamwork is built on that foundation of trust, which is, again, key. You've got to have that right away when you're in the military. You got to have that right away as a federal civil servant so that then you can be that trusted expert. And when you become that trusted expert, you're that trusted advisor. People look up to you, respect your opinions, and they know that you're going to give them the honest truth. Sometimes it's going to be a difficult conversation. Sometimes you're going to take a difficult conversation from somebody else. And having that two-way dialogue, again, that's really crucial to building that team. And I think that's what I love about, the three of us here is getting that perspective. Hey, Scott, I need you to look at this a different way. Oh, thanks for pointing that out. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's evident if anyone's, either they're watching or listening to this episode, it's evident that you all do see yourselves as a team. And Jeremy, I want to take it over to you. You have touched on some of those themes already, but yeah, how does teamwork to you figure into how successfully clients are going to be focused upon from the future as far as RS&H's services?
Yeah, so, we're creating tomorrow together, and our federal clients are going to demand more than they have in the past. And they need a synchronized team from RS&H to do so. So we need to come as one platform. NAVFAC used to use the term one facility's voice, but we need to create, as Scott was talking about, trust. And within trust is credibility. So we're building that, with our proven results. But we want to be that trustworthy client where they'll give you a phone call and ask you for, hey, I need your opinion on something. So we entrust that with our teams. And the fact that we are, and I want to emphasize it, we are employee owners. We're all in this together. We have direct ownership of the company, and we stand for our company, and we want to deliver. Again, creating tomorrow together.
Yeah. Perfectly said. And Cheryl, I intentionally came to you last because you're the newer addition, the newest of these three to the team, the RS&H team. So teamwork, you got that fresh perspective and eyes on it and that feel. How important is that teamwork going to be to delivering to the federal market clients from RS&H?
I think teamwork is vital to the success of any project. You're better together than you are apart. But I'd like to take it from a different perspective as well, is that it's not just the teaming internal to RS&H, which I think is vital, but it's a teaming across the entire project delivery team, no matter where that serves, and no matter what the client really is, whether, which federal client it is. We have our partnerships sometimes we have small business partnerships, we have joint venture partnerships, and don't forget that the clients themselves and the stakeholders that they serve are partners as well. And it's a large teaming environment, and each one of them bring a different perspective and a different subject matter expertise. So in some cases, that team is actually just being able to build upon each other. That's the importance of the planning shreds and the design shreds and the review meetings, to be able to bring all of those folks together in a different venue, to be able to work through problem resolution and figure out, okay, we've got this complex issue. How are we going to make it, whether it's due to timelines or budget constraints? And so you've got to think of an innovative way in which to solve the problem or get after it. Or maybe it's that we're working with the team and doing a new alternative delivery approach, like progressive design build or design build a budget, which we're doing quite a bit of these days. So being able to really just work collectively as a larger team and seeing ourselves as that holistic team and not just an RS&H team, but the entire team that is there to be able to deliver that project from the inception to the construction aspect of it, and then to occupancy and making sure that the end users and those that actually occupy that building, that we've delivered it to its intent and to its purpose, and that it functions in the manner in which it was supposed to. And I think that's pretty critical. And there's a lot of new things going on. And as the federal government's priorities change, RS&H will change with it, whether it's a focus on new secure facilities or infrastructure modernization or repurposing of buildings, of older buildings for new functions and new delivery methods. RS&H will change with our federal clients.
Yeah, we're hearing that loud and clear from you three excellent leaders. You all gave us so much to think about too, but also so much to look forward to as far as like that collaboration and innovation in the federal market leadership from RS&H for the AEC industry. So once again, I want to thank all of you. Thank you, Scott, Jeremy, and Cheryl, for joining us on the podcast today. Thank you so much, Al, for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Really appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Of course. And don't forget, everybody, click like, click subscribe, and follow this podcast wherever you find your favorite podcast. And join us for all the future episodes from AEC Perspectives, podcast by RS&H. Have a great day, everyone.